We had a really great youth program. We had, let's see, originally it was Brother Lloyd Curl. So he was obviously very, very good. And then we had somewhere in there, we had Brother Tremblay, JP Tremblay.
Mhm.
And I can remember one event that particularly stuck out in my mind is that we actually did a venturing company. But we did it in conjunction with, we held the license, we held the charter, and we paired up with the RCMP because the RCMP in their charter have the ability to run a venturing program. It's in their records or writings or whatever they've got, so they can do this. So we paired up with them, and so we met every Wednesday evening. We met down at the Surrey RCMP detachment at their headquarters down there by the city hall in that complex, and we met in for an hour in the detachment itself, and we did that's where we had our meeting. And then after that, we would go spend an hour and a half in the gym in the remand center. And so the remand center is a maximum security penitentiary. So it was set up, and so when we were to come, they locked everybody down. And so then we would go through, and so it's really quite fun. We had a great group of kids, and we we did some martial arts with JP. We played sports, lots of hockey and basketball and all that kind of stuff. So we played all that kind of stuff, and these kids, all stuck around for quite a long time. We had like 20 kids or something there. Like, it was big. But it was really quite fun because you'd watch when the first attitude, when the cops, you should see the change in the attitude. The attitude changed dramatically with these guys. They really came to have quite a degree of respect with that. We did a bunch of ride-alongs as well, so that they would actually go. And it was very interesting because the police officers came by and got to know the kids as well. And so they got to know them. And then it was fun when we were in the remand center. It's kind of an interesting place. They would, at the doors, throughout every night, there would be at least two or three different guards come by and just watch us, just poke in and watch. And so I asked one of them one time, I said, what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of kids here playing around. She says, you know what? With what we have to deal with, it's really nice to see somebody normal. I remember that comment from one of the guys there. So I really got to see. And then we did a tour. So at the end of the year, we actually did a tour of the facility. So they did a lockdown again, and then we went through, and the stuff you see there is just subhuman. And it just is quite shocking to see some of that stuff that people can actually get like that. So now, once you see that, you can see the rationale behind this guy. Like, you get him in touch with normality. This isn't the world. This is hopefully a fairly small subset of the world, and the world is much different than what he deals with all the time. So that was very cool. It was neat to be able to do that. We had, the number of things that the scouters did that we did the West Coast Trail, we did Byron Lakes, we did the Broken Islands. So the kids did some pretty big things. We did a cruise. They did trying to think of the fellow's name. It's just on the tip of my, I see him perfectly, and he's in Vernon right now. And the name has just escaped me, but he had a big trimaran, a 50-foot trimaran. And so we actually did that. And one of the things that I had them do was I had them take the Power Squadron. So we signed up, and all the kids did the Power Squadron. So they all did the Power Squadron before we did, as part of the training, and then they went on this summer cruise on the boat and all that kind of stuff. So we had some pretty neat stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They did the Kettle Valley Railroad.
Yeah. Well,
I remember asking the youth in Surrey Third and special interviews, do you have one language, James, at school and another one at home? How did you know that? Most of them admitted they had to work on what they said at school among their friends and what they'd say in front of mum and dad. So it was worthwhile. I've never forgotten that, the two language system that we operate. We had a lot of camps and things like that. And that's where the Garden Eddies, Francois was amazing. person to take on a camp. I loved it. I've done the West Coast Trail twice, not from there, I don't think.
Yes, and of course, I'm glad you mentioned the mentoring program and your role in that. And that's when I think we're very close, you and I. I'll just go back a little bit when I was called as a deacon's advisor before being sent to Ottawa and later coming back. And I remember being in the deacon's quorum, talking to them. There were 10 of them. And it was Ashton, Jason, Behrman, all of them. And I remember in that class one day, I said, based on the statistics in the church at that time, of all 10 deacons that are active, only one serve a full-time mission. And so I said, I'll tell you what, why don't we start now and we watch over each other? If one of the deacons is struggling, all the others rally and help that person. And sometimes it may be somebody else's turn. So if we do that and we stick together and we help one another, I think we're going to do much better. And eventually I became the young men's president and still continue to work with them. And of course, as a deacon, Jason was there. So was stuck with his dad as leader. And when I became young men's president, he was still stuck with me. And I was bishop, he was still stuck with me. But of all these 10 deacons, 9 of them served the mission. So that's probably one of the highlights, something that I remember, and I think about them.
Because I usually went with the young men on their summer expeditions, whatever they were at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember a trip we took in the Stein Valley. But one of the years, Brother Walton was on the trip when we went up there, and Brother Eden, we went up to Pemberton on the way to get to the Stein Valley, and Brother Eden was one of the drivers, and we were in the town of Pemberton. My family was trying to get hold of me, and they could not because my phone was off, but they tracked Brother Eden down, and they got a hold of him. And I still have memory of this. He came into the restaurant, I think we were at a McDonald's, and he told me he needs to talk to me. So he came out and he told me that he had been contacted. And my family got a hold of him, and my father had died, hours before. And it wasn't unexpected, but the timing, of course, was not known. But anyway, so I had to abort the trip with the youth, and Brother Walton and Bryce, he and David Walton took the boys on the trip that we had planned up to Stein Valley. And I had to go back, and I went to Calgary and dealt with the family situation. So I totally missed that trip. But afterwards, Brother Walton spoke to me about how difficult that hike was for him. And there was a particular mountain, they called it Unnecessary Mountain, that they had to go over. And he's definitely agreed that was the proper name for it. But he's not the kind of, he didn't do a lot of hiking, so he didn't have a lot of experience in that. But anyway, he took the boys and they had a good trip.
Also, the young man, we had so many families being baptized, and then they had kids at age 12 or teenage years. We had a tremendous. We went from very, very small when Bishop Olson was finishing his term. We had practically no young man, maybe 1 or 2. That's it. I would say I'm giving him some, I'm giving us some buffer here for 1 or 2, but I don't think we had any. And then, it converged into a lot of members moving in, a lot of baptisms coming. One family that got baptized, the Raffles, they had the 2 boys. That was a great example of a family that through the missionary efforts joined the church, and then they stayed maybe a year in primary, and then boom, young man. And then a lot of the kids that were in primary, my boys and Verhagen's boys and many others, boom, became young men. And several other families that moved in with their boys and they're young, and became young men. So all of a sudden, from 2008-ish to 12, we had about, I don't know, between 15 and 20.
I'm pretty sure Sarah Harrington was a Relief Society president while he was a bishop. I can give you an interesting anecdote. One day, Bishop Olson called me to the computer, and he said, "Look at this family." And it was a family, a lovely husband and wife, and 3 sweet little boys. And little brimming of tear came to his eyes, which I rarely would ever see. And he said, "Look at this great little family." And I said, "Oh, wow." And that family, he said, they are friends of brother and sister Margaret and Margaret and brother Denise. And they were from Brazil, and they were their friends in Brazil, and they're going to move either to Toronto or Australia. So I'm going to ask brother Denise to get them to move here. So brother Denise must have maybe had strong suggestions to him made by Bishop Olson. And this dear family were the Ortolanos, and they did move to our ward. And subsequently to Lauren being released, the next bishop was Bishop Ortolano. And I know he had said to Bishop Olson, or former Bishop Olson at that point, "You got me into this. You got me into this. Why did you do this to me?" And Lauren, former Bishop Olson, would say, "Well, I was Bishop 01. You are now Bishop 02. Because they were both Bishop O." So that was just a dear little anecdote. And it's always been good that the Dinas family helped bring this family to our ward and not anywhere else.
I think that's one of the things that when I was asked, we started, our Sunday school. I realized that a lot of our seniors who are speaking Hindi and coming into getting baptized, those Punjabi ones here in Surrey, they were really not grasping the doctrine. And so, and it was very basic knowledge of the gospel. When I talked to them, they really didn't have that root of the gospel in them. So I realized, wait a sec, they need to be taught in their own language. And so, along with talking to President Woolsey, he felt like this was going to become big, and we could do more with this. His vision is right, but I think the implementation was maybe lacking something. What I realized was that if we had the support of the mission and a little bit more upper hand, would probably do better. And that's something maybe I could request or encourage, or somehow talk to someone saying we need, because what happened was we started doing a Hindi sacrament meeting side by side with English, and I kind of missed sitting with the ward, because then you sit up there, you look at the face of the members, and we feel the spirit who I should work with. But then I'd be doing the Hindi one. But sometimes, because the missionaries would bring English speaking investigators, so they wouldn't be in the Hindi one. And so I would need a full-time missionary dedicated to this language to really fly with it. And that was lacking, the concentration of the, from the mission. They want to do it, I understand, but it wasn't, maybe that we were lacking that because there wasn't a full-time effort of the missionary that way, where they were assigned, right? It was just a group If it was like a branch or something, I think it would fly. If they open a branch, Hindi speaking Punjabi branch, because then there'd be that dedicated missionary who would work at it. And you can work with those missionaries. Right now, it's really not doable. But yeah, that's something happened, and that was fun. The first Hindi Punjabi speaking sacrament meeting ever in the world was done here in the 33rd Ward. So we feel we should be proud of them. We're still holding the Punjabi speaking Sunday school, and it's broadcast worldwide right now. And then there's so many members who've joined that Facebook group all over, and they're watching us teach the gospel. But that we could really do better, I think, if we were to have the support the way I was just suggesting.
We wanted family with kids. We've been praying for those families to move in, and here you are. So tell me all about you. And then we had a great time in his living room, and what a great man.
I think that's one of the things that what I was asked. We started, our Sunday school. I realized that a lot of our seniors who are speaking Hindi and coming into getting baptized, those Punjabi ones here in Surrey, they were really not grasping the doctrine, and so and it was very basic knowledge of the gospel. When I talked to them, they really didn't have that root of the gospel in them. So I realized, wait a sec, they need to be taught in their own language. And so along with talking to President Woolsey, he felt like this was going to become big, and we could do more with this. His vision is right, but I think the implementation was maybe lacking something. What I realized was that if we had the support of the mission and a little bit more upper hand, we'd probably do better. And that's something maybe I could request or encourage or somehow talk to someone saying we need, because what happened was we started doing a Hindi sacrament meeting side by side with English, and I kind of missed sitting with the ward, because then you sit up there, you look at the face of the members, and we feel the spirit who I should work with. But then I'd be doing the Hindi one. But sometimes, because the missionaries would bring English speaking investigators, so they wouldn't be in the Hindi one. And so I would need a full-time missionary dedicated to this language to really fly with it. And that was lacking, the concentration of the, from the mission. They want to do it, I understand, but it wasn't, maybe that we were lacking that because there wasn't a full-time effort of the missionary that way, where they were assigned, right? It was just a group. If it was like a branch or something, I think it would fly. If they open a branch, Hindi speaking Punjabi branch, because then there'd be that dedicated missionary who would work at it. And you can work with those missionaries. Right now, it's really not doable. But yeah, that's something happened, and that was fun. The first Hindi Punjabi speaking sacrament meeting ever in the world was done here in the 33rd Ward. So we feel we should be proud of them. We're still holding the Punjabi speaking Sunday school, and it's broadcast worldwide right now. And then there's so many members who've joined that Facebook group all over, and they're watching us teach the gospel. But that we could really do better, I think, if we were to have the support the way I was just suggesting.
I don't have any memories of any problems associated with that. People just seem to all of a sudden be dealt with.
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be, I don't know, maybe there's people talking behind my back or something, but I don't recall any issues associated with the word splitting in terms of people. There were, in regards to that, it's not really between 33rd and Delta Ward, but there was, I believe there still is a number of Spanish people speaking people in both wards, particularly 33rd Ward. And there were some people who had trouble figuring out where the loyalties lie, because they had the choice of attending the Spanish branch in their own language and attending 33rd Delta Ward in English. And there were some families who really didn't want to go to English because they didn't speak English so well, but stuck with it because they were loyal, I guess, and others who didn't. And there was some, I don't know what you call it, feelings about that weren't particularly positive.
Mhm.
But other than that, I don't recall any problems with the actual word divisions at all.
So I was actually the agent bishop as well of the new stake center. So
Oh,
I
okay.
spent quite a bit of time poking around the building to make sure that things were secure and safe and all that kind of stuff. And the same thing occurred once we got into the building. Then I was the agent bishop, and I know we had for a little while there because we had a parking lot, a nice big space at the back, and it was just bush.
Yeah.
So it was a nice isolated area, and it was close to everything. So there was kids in the evening would come up and do drug deals and all that kind of stuff. So we sort of organized a bit of a, and so it was interesting. We kind of sort of organized people to kind of go poke in now and again, see what's happening. And I can remember I had a Belgian Malinois at the time, and so I can remember that in the evenings, some about 9 o'clock, 9:30 or so, I'd head up there with the dog, and we'd go in and go through the building, make sure nobody was breaking in, all the doors were locked, and all that kind of stuff. So we had to do that for a little while. That seemed to eventually settle down.
Yeah.
And so we eventually, I think we were down there for a year in White Rock. We eventually made it back into the building. Took us a little while to settle in, and it was good.
And it felt so special to come into that big building, a stake center, which we'd watched being built. And then I found out the youth had been playing up in the attic during construction, doing videos and things, things you learn afterwards. But it was exciting because it was quite a way down to, was it 40th Street? Where's the other checkpoint?
40th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a way down, especially for seminary and things like that,
Yeah.
and being drivers and so on. But it was quite exciting to see that building go up and then to come into one of the first bishoprics and